course, we basically adopt a 5-step approach to stakeholder engagement, if you like. So it's quite a systematic process. Step one is really, sort of laying out our engagement strategy. So thinking about, what sort of outcomes, what is the vision here and ambition that we want to achieve, and making sure that everyone is sort of aligned, right? And sort of on the same page, if you like. The second step is actually stakeholder mapping. So this is basically the exercise where we would sort of go through in detail, like who are, interested parties that are involved, right, on a certain environmental project that we would need to engage with. What is the power dynamics at play? Are they governments or citizens or even civil society organizations like NGOs that may have an interest in this space? What sort of value do they bring to the table? And can we actually leverage on some of their strengths, right, to achieve the intended outcomes that we have set out in terms of engagement strategy? And then the third step is actually preparation. So this is really where a lot of the logistics, planning, arrangement of meetings actually take place. Quite a fair bit of administrative work in step 3. And then the actual engagement takes place face-to-face, ideally, or I suppose in the case of a COVID-19 pandemic where you have a lockdown, like we could always opt for virtual platforms such as Zoom. And I suppose the last stage, step 5, is really on action plans. And for me, this is also perhaps one of the most important steps ever, because it's really the stage where you are consolidating, right, inputs from different stakeholders, and then sort of looking out for opportunities, right, identifying gaps and planning for next steps. And I think every stakeholder engagement strategy sort of needs to end with that.
Absolutely. I love that there's those clear 5 steps, because I feel like when you haven't engaged in this previously, it's nice to have that really tangible way to go about building stakeholder networks. Could you repeat the 5, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that our listeners can be like, okay, got it, writing it down?
Sure. So our 5-step approach, the first step is setting out your engagement strategy. The second step is stakeholder mapping. So identifying who are the key players that are important, right, that are involved in your environmental project. Third step is preparation, planning out for logistics and whatever administrative work that needs to be done. The fourth step is the actual engagement in itself, right? So meeting with your stakeholders face-to-face, carrying out workshops, virtual meetings if you need to. And the fifth step, last but not least, is action plans. So identifying, consolidating, all of the ideas that have come across from different parties, what are some of the gaps, identifying opportunities, and the next steps. Well, I think one of the key principles in sustainability or the work that I do is really, to leave no one behind. And this is very much aligned with the aspirations of the Sustainable Development Goals as well. And hence, I personally view that diversity of opinions is important. It is very crucial to get, marginalized communities' voices represented in certain round tables. And I think we should strive to respect that. And there is sort of an advantage of doing that, because it helps you see the bigger picture that you may not necessarily see, right? Because we do tend to have selective biases in terms of our experiences, our backgrounds, and that sort of shapes our opinions. And hence, having a diverse group of people represented is absolutely important. But having said so, there is also this danger of, sort of having too diverse of opinions to a point in time where no one can actually come to a consensus. And you get analysis paralysis at the end of the day, which could be destructive, I think, to what you have initially intended to achieve. And one of the things that I've personally found helpful is to always go back to, step 1 of your engagement strategy that I mentioned earlier, on what is the vision, what is the intended outcome that you want to achieve. and to ensure that all stakeholders, all interested parties are actually aligned to that objective. And if they are, and if that is the intent that they're working towards, it should be something that you would be able to resolve eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Marina, I think that's quite an interesting question. And in this part of the world, that there's this phrase that we use, Western ideals versus Asian realities. And what I mean by that is that, in the sustainability field, very often than not, human rights tend to sort of come up to the fore. So as you know, human rights has got quite broad range of issues, right? From the need to pay workers like fair wages, ensuring that there's no child labor happening across different industries, and so that's sort of the standard, right, or guidelines that most Western communities actually subscribe to. But just taking child labor, for example, in certain parts of Southeast Asia, it's perfectly normal, or it's sort of culturally embedded for children to actually help out their parents, like during school holidays. So you will find kids sometimes helping their parents in the field, picking up fresh fruit bunches, for example, in the palm oil industry, as a start. And for most people, they see that as, I suppose in Western countries, they see that as a no-no. It's child labor, like you are exploiting children. But if you were coming from an Asian perspective, that it's perfectly normal, like for kids to help out in their families. So how do you reconcile that? I think there are some nuances in terms of culture that we need to resolve. And what's important, I think, is to sort of just have that cultural awareness and an understanding that that there's no one size fits all, like in our work. Yeah, I suppose going back to the point made earlier about having sort of input or understanding differences in culture, I think dialogue or conversation is really the strongest antidote, like to sort of settle differences. One of the things that I think I haven't actually mentioned is trust, right? So trust for me is an extremely important currency when it comes to managing stakeholder relations. And it's something that's not going to happen overnight. Stakeholder engagement is a continuous journey. You don't just engage with your stakeholders at the start of a project, but throughout the project, there's the need to sort of check in with your stakeholders to monitor progress, like to see if certain objectives have sort of objectives need to be pivoted as a result of different changes, different variables. And then, when you reach to the end of the project, the closing stage, there's also a need to sort of engage with them, see what sort of feedback do they have, so that you can take on those inputs for continuous. So I think that's absolutely crucial, right? Just to build up that trust, right, and getting to know your stakeholders well. That's what's in. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think, wow, there's so much to unpick there, and I think young people moving into this space, I like that you reminded us that this is dynamic. This is a long-term thing. This is going to change up. We've got to keep agile and aware of what our stakeholders are looking for, what we're looking for, and how we can create coherence. And be flexible. There's many cultures, many nations, and many sectors involved in the environmental challenges that we're facing in so many different spaces. So there's so much to unpick there, and I almost feel like we could continue for hours, but thank you so much for those insights. I think they'll be very valuable for young people trying to start projects in ASEAN and Australia. So thank you again, Dr. Siew.
Thank you. Thanks, Marina.